Keep striving in every way. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm rhythm and I move with the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place I with the one Jamal skinny. Jump up on the rhythm, make we ride it right. Chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we chop a mic, they call we give it a general. When me ride palm rhythm and I move with the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place I with the one Jamal skinny.
All right. Hello. How is everyone doing today? It's your boy Joshua Casper back at you with another live stream. This time we're joined by the co-founder of Sonible, Alex Wankhammer. I'm excited to have him. I'm so excited I can't even talk right. But I wanted to just come on and say hello, let people filter in a little bit late as they do. Music producers, you know the crowd. Everybody, while we're waiting for a second, let me know where you're coming from. I see Jim Freeman in the chat. He's my homie. Good to see you. I see Plug-in Deals TV here. Love to have you. You're always around, being positive. Love it. So today, actually, no, but before we get into today, I just want to bring up some stuff. Let me just bring this over here. We got live streams coming up. This is the first live stream we've done in a little bit. We've been working on the internet here in the office, and now we're in a place where we can start these again, and I'm incredibly excited about it. I think for the most part, you all enjoy these. You enjoy them as much as I like doing them, so really pumped to be starting them again today with Sonible. September 21st and 22nd, we're going to have two separate live streams with Isotope. The first one on the 21st will be covering RX10 with a project specialist and a project lead. And then on the 22nd, we will be covering Ozone 10. That's not released yet, but it will be by the time we do that stream. So definitely subscribe, hit that bell, because those are going to be insane. We also have another one on the 27th of September with Arturia, where we're going to be going through the new distortion plugin, Coldfire. That's going to be with our good friend Francois Bourillon. He did the EFX Fragments stream we did a while back. Really chill dude, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what someone who manages a project like Coldfire can show us in terms of what the plugin can do. And then way out in October 6th, the day after my birthday, put your birthday wishes in the chat now if you want, we're going to be checking out Mastering the Mix. I can't tell you what that stream is going to be about because it's not released yet, but it's going to be insane. It's going to be awesome. And make sure to join us for that as well. Lots of streams coming up. Then I will be on a little vacation, and then when I get back, live streams, at least one a week. So if you like these, let me know in the chat. And we will keep making them if you keep watching them. So, with that all being said, oh, thank you for the happy birthday wishes. I do appreciate that. With that being said, I'm going to bring in our guest, Alex. And let me just, yep, we got Alex, and we got the applause happening right now. It's important that you know it. It's my favorite sound effect. Alex Wankhammer, how are you today, sir?
Fine. Bit tired from work, but still glad to be here. So thanks for having me.
Oh, we're very excited to have you. Obviously, you are, as I mentioned, the co-founder of Sonible. Also, I think your day-to-day is the chief marketing officer, if I am correct. Can you just give us a little bit of the story? I mean, if you founded Sonible, let us know where the idea came from, sort of the evolution from where you started to where we are now with all of these smart plugins. Obviously, that's going to be the focus of today. But just give us kind of the broad the broad, the broad strokes there of how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, sure. So Sonible was founded by three people, Ralph, Peter, and myself. And we all studied audio engineering at the university in Graz. And at the same time, we worked either as programmers or as people doing stuff in the studio to finance our study program. And the nice thing about the program is that it is at the University of Music and Performing Arts, as well as at the University of Technology. So we learned everything you need from the technical side to build, for example, audio plugins, but we also learned the whole musical stuff that you need to get started with a product for music production. And when we finished, so we finished at the same time. We've always been good friends at university. And when we finished, we thought about, what's next? Should we stay at university, do a PhD or so? But it was a bit too theoretical. Or should we go to a bigger company? But then we would probably just, fine-tune the sound of a squeaking car door, which can be nice, but it was not like our vision of what we wanted to do with our audio know-how. And that's why we decided to let's just do our own stuff. And since we worked in the studio during our studies, we saw how much stuff was going on in research that was not available yet to the users. So we saw this huge gap that's there. And somehow we felt, okay, there are a couple of ideas that we have that would be nice if we could have them when working in the studio. So it was really like just out of our own intentions, our own wishes. So it was very naive, to be honest. So there was in the beginning, there was no big business plan or market research. It was just like, wouldn't it be great to have a tool that's doing this or that? And then we started, we worked at university as research assistants, and in parallel, we started the project Sonible. So it was not the company then. And the first tool we looked into was Freiraum, that was our first plugin. And the idea was with Freiraum to make a tool that's able to remove reverb. That was the initial idea of Freiraum. And when developing Freiraum, we stumbled upon a couple of interesting topics, and one of them was actually automatic equalization. And we stumbled upon the new field of machine learning, which was really just coming up or moving into the music production scene at the time. And then everything started from there. We also had a side show, so we also did some hardware in the beginning. We stopped doing that by now, but we did some live hardware because the other two founders were also quite heavily involved in live mixing and so on. So it was the tools for connecting consoles to computers and so on. But at some point we had to focus, and then we focused on the plugins. And and starting with FryRAM, we always tried to, we never had the goal to, for example, emulate existing things. I mean, there are a couple of companies that are really good in doing that. And we always wanted to see what's possible if you use digital signal processing and you apply it to a thing like an EQ, a compressor or whatever, without the limitations that you actually have if you're doing it in an analog world. And that's why we always, with every new product, we kind of rethink how could this product be implemented if we would start from scratch and not with the limitations that we had initially when we did it in analog design. And I think that's what excites us when doing it. And I think that's also the exciting thing for people, that hopefully the tools are forward thinking and not just another whatever, EQ compressor, whatever, but really new thoughts coming in, new possibilities coming in, and really enjoy doing that. So it's, in the end, now we are a company by now, and we are a bit more focused on business plans and stuff. But I think the initial, the thing we're burning for is still the nice, cool products that we can develop and bring to the world. So yeah, it's a very short history of the last 9 years.
Well, I mean, it's been a very productive 9 years. You've got quite a few plugins out. How many? Do you know off the top how many plugins in total you've had released to date?
I think it's it's 8 that are currently out there. I think it was. I mean, with all the updates, it was a bit more, but it's 8 right. that are currently out. Yeah.
So about just under one a year, and obviously, speaking of forward thinking, all of your latest plugins are literally titled Smart, because what was the big jump? What was the aha moment where you're like, well, this is the future. We can really use this technology to not only, make our plugins better, but actually help in real time, help our users get better results with the plugins that we're making. When about did that happen, and how long was the implementation process?
It happened along the way of developing FryRAM, like the first plugin, because as I said, we wanted to focus on de-reverberation in the beginning, and we had some hurdles there that were not really possible or not easy to overcome at the time. And at some point, we found out that one important thing when doing de-reverberation is also to fix problems with in your frequency response, of a signal. And then we had a couple of approaches, very complex ones, very simple ones. And then there was one approach by now we have a different one, but at the time it was a new approach that we developed. And it was really just one idea that we had, and we tried it out and it worked. And it was so funny because for a month we were researching different stuff. We were reading papers, we were doing our own implementations. And then we had a quite simple idea at some point, and the solution that we had, this initial one, was quite easy. I mean, it was not easy to build a product out of it, but the core idea was quite easy. And so and when we found this idea, we really had the core idea was quite easy. And so and when we found this idea, we really had the feeling, okay, we found something big here. So this is something we should focus on for the next products that are coming up. And then we went more and more into we moved away from the de-reverberation ideas and so on, and we moved more and more into the machine learning field and looked into new advances there, just to lift the glass ceiling a bit, because we always had limitations of how good the system is, and we always depended on data to a certain point. But in the beginning, there was just a lot of model-based stuff in there. I can talk about that later probably. And then the really big shifts were coming when we focused really on extracting information from huge amounts of data and then consolidating that in a way that it became usable for users, so that you have some audio sample, and by using a lot of data to train a system, the system learns how to handle this audio sample. So this was the really exciting thing that happened in the last couple of years.
Nice. And just a completely unrelated question. Is that a theremin on your desk behind you?
It actually is. My brother gave it to me. It was actually it was in parts. It was not assembled. I assembled it myself. But I'm really, really not really good in playing it. It's more for decoration there. Now, I mean, I play it from time to time, and it's fantastic what you can do in terms of sound design. But I'm very bad in playing actual tunes or so. But it's a great instrument, by the way. So totally underestimated.
It was the first. Was it not the first electronic instrument? Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, electronic. It was a electromagnetic instrument. It's so crazy because you play it without touching it, just by interfering with your electromagnetic field, and this is like, it's genius. Like in terms of the concept behind it. Yeah.
Nice. Absolutely phenomenal. Everybody, I forgot to mention, I always forget this, but Alex has been kind enough to allow us to give away some of these incredible plugins we are talking about now and we're about to check out in here. And to win, all you need to do is be a positive force in the chat, ask good questions, answer questions, and just be all around good people. I already know you all are, and we're excited to have you. So, Alex, what do you say we jump into your desktop and check out some of these plugins you were just talking about?
We sure can, yeah.
All right, so we're pulling it up right now. What are we checking out first today?
Like I got a project prepared, a quite simple one, where I can show basically all of the plugins. So we can have a short look at every plugin, but I would start with Smart Eq, because it was the first smart plugin that we had. And with Smart Eq, I think it's quite good to understand and to explain the core concept behind what the plugins are doing. So that's how I would start.
And we're on Smart Eq3 now, right? We're on the third version already.
Exactly, yeah. We had like the initial one, like the first implementation was Freiraum, but Freiraum was a combination of the smart layer and two other layers, proximity and entropy layer. Then we split it into Smart EQ Plus, then was Smart EQ 2, and then now is Smart EQ 3. And there was a huge change in terms of processing between Smart EQ 2 and Smart EQ 3. So
there's also a big jump in design as well, which everybody's about to check out. I really dig the new UIs.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the new UI. I think I give a very short introduction to the core concept of the plugins for people who never use them. Okay. And then I will just introduce the project and go step by step through the individual plugins.
Absolutely. And anyone, just before you jump in, anyone who's got a question along the way, just go ahead and put it in the chat or at Plugin Boutique, and we will ask those of Alex when there's the prime opportunity to do that. But go ahead, Alex, take it away.
Yeah. So as Joshua already said, like all our plugins are called Smart, and then whatever comes after that. And the reason why they are called Smart is because they have the ability to listen to your signal and to automatically suggest kind of starting parameters to process the signal. So for the EQ, it would be a EQ curve that's suggested. For the compressor and for the limiter, it would be kind of the core compression and limiting settings that are suggested. And for the reverb, it is we call it reverb space. So more or less a selection of reverb characteristics that fit your signal. So it's always about kind of preparing the canvas for the creative work. That's how we like to explain it. Yeah, and that's why they are called Smart, and that's why all of the plugins have a knob like this. And yeah, probably I just get started. I just play back the track so that you know what's coming up. So this is already with a couple of effects applied.
We're just coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty room.
So we have a main vocal, some backing vocals, drums, guitars, bass, some ambience. That's it. And I summed the backing vocals, drums, and guitars into buses because otherwise the project would be too complex for showing it here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you how Smart Eq3 works on the vocals. And to do so, I just remove the plugin from the track and reload it so that we can kind of, as you can see, I have a lot of plugins on my computer. So I just loaded on the main vocals track. I sold the track. And now, as I said, the plugin is able to listen to the audio signal. and you can kind of help the plugin to optimize its processing by telling the plugin what it has to expect when listening to the signal. And that's why we have profiles. So you have the learning button, and this is the profile dropdown. For Smart EQ, there are kind of all the profiles from Smart EQ are more or less focused on single instruments. As you will see, for the limiter and for the compressor, it's a bit different. So we have profiles for whole mixes there. But for the EQ, for now, we have single instruments. In this case, I have a male vocal, so I select a vocal low. I click the record button, and then I just hit the playback button, and you will see how the plugin is listening to the signal.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms.
And so if I now as you can see, the plugin learned a filter curve, and just to give you a feeling for the before and after, so I bypass it.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out.
So it's a bit nasal, and it lacks mid and bass energy. And if I now compare A and B, like the plugin with the filter and like the track with the filter and without the filter.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty room. Which is
So the plugin quickly analyzed the track and suggested an initial filter curve that just balances out the signal. It didn't add any kind of special character to it, because that's not the idea of what the plugin should be doing. But the idea is that it finds problems that most of the engineers out there who know what they're doing would fix anyway. So that's kind of, it's a bit difficult to explain this part, and we can probably later discuss a bit more how the plugin knows what to do. But that's the result. And the nice thing is that now we have the filter curve here, and I can do multiple things with that. So I can on the one hand select the frequency range where I want to apply this filter curve. I can tell the plugin, okay, I really want to go crazy and I want to overcompensate for what you suggested, or I just want to take kind of slightly adapt the signal. So although the plugin is suggesting this filter, you have full control over how it's applied to the signal. So this is like for Smart EQ, this is kind of the main part of the smart processing. But with the plugin, one thing which is probably important is if you have a filter curve and you say, okay, I like the curve, but I want to modify it in a way that fits my taste, you can always add individual filters, like with any normal EQ, and you can, for example, add a bit more heights or take out, like, work a bit against the suggestion if you don't like it. So you can work with the plugin as with any other EQ, but with the benefit of having this initial starting point that's really, really quickly there.
Hey, Alex, got a question.
Yeah.
When you're running the analysis, I've always had sort of, I just didn't know, and I'm excited to be able to ask you this. If I am looking to EQ a vocal, how does Smart EQ, or indeed any of the smart plugins, deal with no signal? Like, is it going to negatively affect the analysis in any way? Is it good just to loop a vocal phrase with zero empty space, or?
No, I mean, I can no, if there is really zero signal, it's simply ignored.
Okay.
So the plugin has an internal threshold, and everything falling below this threshold is ignored because it's assumed that this could be noise. So for example, if you have a vocal and then there is some crosstalk from another channel, you don't want to adapt to the crosstalk. That's why the plugin kind of identifies a noise floor and ignores anything below that. And if there's pure silence, it just stops learning. I mean, I can show you if I hit learn. And now I selected a section that is pure silence in between. And now you see it's just not learning because there is no...
Okay, so it literally physically stops.
Exactly, yeah.
Nice.
Finding our way out, no more empty room.
And how would you, is there an adaptive EQ? How would you deal with if there's like a falsetto part? I mean, usually that would be on a separate track, but does Smart EQ have like an adaptive feature where it almost does it in real time and will change when it's a change in frequency of the voice?
Yeah, you can do that. So normally, as I did now, once the filter is learned, it's a static filter. It's just as if you would have set the filter curves and that's it. But if you have, if you know that in your track there are certain sections where the spectral balance changes quite significantly just for a certain amount of time, you can right-click this thumb and then you can set the filter to dynamic.
Finding our way out. No more empty rooms.
And what you can see now,
Finding our way out. No more empty rooms.
the main balance of the filter remains the same, but if signal energy is coming in at some point that wasn't there before, it adapts to the signal. And if we would have a falsetto in there, it would kind of pull out any frequencies that don't work in that way. So the dynamic mode is a great feature the dynamic mode is most of the time working really, really well. If you have a lot of instances, the dynamic mode eats a bit more CPU power than the other modes, so you shouldn't use it all the time. But if you, for example, just have 5, 6, 7 instances, you can always use dynamic mode. Probably not set to 100% because then it can have, if you overdo it, it could have an impact on the signal. Just change the sound of the signal in a way that you may not want, because sometimes you want some parts to stand out a bit and so on. So, but altogether, it's a great way to deal with signals that are not totally consistent.
You mentioned CPU. That's always a question. It's just very standard to wonder about the CPU. And we have, I think, Nick D was wondering how CPU intensive is Smart EQ and indeed all of the smart plugins. And then maybe if you want to elaborate on how you mitigate CPU's drain, because obviously it's doing a lot of processing. It's literally listening and thinking and doing this. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So altogether, we try to keep the CPU load as low as possible, obviously, so to make sure that you can use multiple instances without a problem. Smart EQ in dynamic mode is indeed the most CPU hungry of the plugins that we have. But there is actually an update coming up next week, I think, where we'll significantly reduce CPU load, which will be good for people with M1s, maybe because there was some strange issue with the new M1 processor and the dynamic mode, and we fixed that by now. But altogether, the good thing is that most of the heavy lifting, which is the computation, for example, of the filter curve, is done while listening to the signal. And this is more or less an offline process. So we collect data, and then we analyze the data, and this doesn't have to be fully real time because there is no audio running through while processing. So we can there are spikes in processing, but we can stretch them over time so that they don't become too heavy. And one reason why the dynamic mode is more CPU hungry than the normal mode is that there is constantly some learning going on in the background to be able to adapt to the signal. For other plugins, for example, the compressor and the limiter are relatively easy on the CPU. One thing that can be heavy on the CPU is you have not really heavy, but if you have a plugin, like multiple plugin windows open, since we have a lot of visualizations and most of the time interactive ones, the GUI will also eat some CPU.
Yeah.
I mean, we are painting everything which is complex using OpenGL, so we do it on the graphics card. So we upload it from the CPU to the GPU, but some parts are still done on the CPU. So if you ever have CPU problems, it's always good to think about closing windows you don't need, because in the background they are always rendered, and that will probably eat up some CPU power that you can use for audio processing otherwise.
Great. A couple other questions if you want to bang them out now, or if you want to keep going, we can come back to them when you're done with your presentation.
It's fine. We can just follow the questions.
All right. Another inevitable question is M1 support.
Yep. Like all the smart plugins are natively supported by they have full M1 support. They run natively on the new chips. As I said, for Smart EQ, there was one issue that led to a higher CPU load on M1s when compared to Intel CPUs, but that's fixed with the next update. And other than that, should be working fine on any current operating system, no matter if it's Windows or Mac.
Great. That's awesome to hear. And another question, a couple of people have had this question. Just to clarify, if you're not using the Smart EQ's Smart feature, you've got essentially a parametric EQ just in general, right? How many filter nodes do you have access to? Maybe if you could just run through that real quick. People are wondering about it.
Yeah, sure. If you disable, like you can disable the Smart filter down there for anyone. This is a bit hidden, I have to admit. But you can also pull it down to 0, then it's also disabled, but you can disable it here. So if I'm in this mode, I can just add like, I think it's 25 or 28 filters. I don't really know. I never
more than enough.
Never hit the limit of what's possible. And then you have like the filters. You can switch to like, bell, flat top, cuts, shelving, tilt filter. So the classical stuff that you have. You can switch every filter between stereo, mid, and side. So the plugin the EQ is fully MS capable. So I think it's not every EQ can do by now, but it's one of the features that's loved by people who are a bit more experienced in mixing.
Does the Smart feature take advantage of that? Is that something that might be coming in Smart Eq3 or anything like that?
Right now it doesn't, because technically it would be possible to have 2 filters for the mid signal, like 1 filter for the mid signal, 1 filter for the side signal. But in our experiments, it showed that if you're kind of working on the fundamental balance of your track, it's most of the time not so helpful if you do it either only on the mids or only on the sides.
Right.
So in 90% or more of the use cases, we just thought, okay, it's best to do it on both channels, and that's why for now you cannot switch it to mid side, but technically it would be possible, and if a lot of users are requesting that, we are always open for suggestions. So yeah.
Where can people kind of shout at you about that? Do you have a forum or anything? Is it just get in touch through the website?
I mean, they can always get in touch by the website. There is a contact form that goes to our support team, and our support team communicates all the feature requests to our development team, or actually to me, because I'm in product management, and then I forward the stuff that's probably most relevant to the development team. And another place where we discuss quite a lot of features is always on Gearspace. So we have like all the releases have some threads there, and I'm also actively responding to questions there. For example, for Smart Com 2, there's a quite good thread on different feature ideas. So if people want to get involved, feel free to join.
There you go. Brilliant. And another great question from Cyril Wolf is, does the Smart Eq3 have automatic gain compensation?
No, it doesn't. Couple of reasons for that. One thing was really that we were not happy with the stuff that we tried. Because we could do automatic gain compensation as we are trying to do it with the compressor by using the observation. So we have the observation, we know how the audio signal is looking like, and by having this sample, we can kind of simulate stuff that we are doing with the signal and then adapt the gain. The thing is that we didn't want to have a continuous gain compensation, because otherwise the EQ is not just EQing, but is gain riding. I mean, it could be a feature that's nice, but it's not really typical for an EQ. So in the end, this was a feature that we discussed. It was a feature that we looked into, but it's not included in the product yet.
Wonderful. For everybody just joining, welcome. We're here with Sonible co-founder Alex Wankhammer, and we are checking out all of the smart plugins they have on offer at the moment. And we are doing plugin giveaways throughout the stream. So to win, pretty easy. Just be active in the chat, ask good questions, answer questions you have answers for, and just be a positive force. And that's all it takes to win here with Plugin Boutique and Sonible. Keep cracking away, Alex. I'm excited. This is very informational.
Yep. So what I showed up to now was this easy and quick way to fix or get a good starting point of the spectral balance for a track. But Smart Eq3 can do one more thing, and quite lot of people, even people who own the plugin, don't know about that, and that's why I want to speak about that, because it's personally, I think it's one of the greatest features Smart Eq3 has, and this is the group mode. So as you've seen, the plugin in this case listened to the vocal track and fixed the balance for the vocals. But if you look at EQing, like for any kind of mixing, it's relevant what's going on other channels, but specifically for EQing, it's extremely relevant to know what's going on other channels, to have a kind of function of the track that you're working on. So in terms of, there is a term called spectral mixing, and I think most of you know about that if you have a couple of instruments, a couple of sources, you try to make space in the spectrum, in the frequency space for the different sources. And every source needs a different space, like vocals have their place and guitar has their place and the bass has its place and so on. And if Smart EQ is just sitting on one channel, it cannot know about space that other instruments may need. Mm-hmm. And that's why we introduced group mode in Smart EQ3. So what you can do, or as you can see here, just go down there, there is a Smart EQ instance loaded on all the tracks and the buses that we're trying to mix. And if I now click join group, there exists already a group. So I already created a group. So I joined this. And what you can see here is that all the instances I have in the other channels are available in this group view. So every instance of Smart EQ in this project will be available here in the at instance field, and they will automatically start to communicate among each other. The nice thing that you can do here is that you have 3 different layers, and these layers define more or less the priority of the different tracks. So for example, the main vocals could be or should be always in front. Then there is kind of the support in level 2, which could be the guitars and probably, let's pull in the drums too. The backing vocals, and then the bass and the drums sit in the back, whatever. This is kind of up to the personal taste of the mixing engineer. And what the group impact does is it constantly looks at the signals in every channel and adapts the filters accordingly. So it looks at overlay, like for example, the main vocal needs space in a certain frequency region, and as you can see, if I change the group impact, which is kind of how much impact does this group mode have on the filter that's computed, if I increase that, you can see that, for example, the main vocals need some space here, so the guitars and the drums are pulled out there.
It's actually updating in real time as well.
Exactly. So
even without audio passing through it.
Exactly, because it has the observation, like that's the observation that the plugin had, and I can. The impact is sometimes quite subtle, but I can show you, for example, what's happening if I move the main vocals to the back and the backing vocals to the front, to give you a feeling of what's happening if this group mode is active.
Nice.
With a huge impact.
Finding our way out, no more empty rooms. Finding our way out, no more empty rooms. Finding our way out.
Amazing.
No more empty rooms.
So suddenly the backing vocals are kind of in front and the main vocals are in the back. And that's just done by spectral mixing. I mean, you won't do that because in this case the main vocals give a lot of space to things in the upper layers. But this is a fantastic and great way to get a nicely balanced mix without having to deal with level sliders or with kind of dependent EQs on different windows and so on. And it's so funny because this feature is so great and some people just don't know about it. And that's why I want to kind of tell everyone on this stream, if you ever try out Smart EQ3, please also go to group mode and try out group mode, because I think this could be, or for a lot of people who are using it, this is probably the biggest time saver they have.
I mean, that was just what you've done there is, I mean, I made a video on this when it first came out. I remember touching on this feature, but I mean, just this short, quick example you've given is, yes, use this feature. I mean, my goodness.
And the nice thing is also you can, let's say you load in, I don't know, 5 new instances. then they directly appear in this group mode, and you can then select the profile for each instance from this window, and you can also start learning for each instance from this window. So it's also extremely quickly to start a project from group mode.
So I mean, almost like maybe save it as a default template in your DAW, drop your stems in there. Boom. You can, if I arm the mix or the learn feature there, it will learn all 5 of them at the same time in this specific example, and then I can just start mixing right from there.
Exactly.
Do you have any other control over the individual ones in terms of strength or anything like that, or?
I mean, all of them. So one is the group impact, which is just like how much is the group processing doing on the mix, and the other one is the filter. So the filter is kind of the limiting factor. If I set this filter to 0 and I go to group mode, then also group mode won't do anything. So the smart filter weight that's set in each individual plugin will also have an impact on where and how strongly does the group mode have an impact on the filter curve.
And that's why it's called smart, man. My goodness.
Yeah. So I think that's the main stuff I wanted to show about Smart EQ. If there are any questions, happy to answer.
I did see one that I thought was a pretty good question. That was what type of filters they are, if they're minimum phase or linear, or if there's analog, and if there are multiple ones, or is there a way to switch between the?
Good question. Yes, there is a way to switch between them. So you can go to the settings page, which is the small cogwheel here. And currently they're in linear phase mode. And they're linear phase, and there is a processing latency due to the linear phase mode. If you disable this, then they're in minimum phase mode, and the plugin doesn't have, then it's 0 latency. So if linear phase mode is disabled, you can even use it in real-time tracking, for example, because the plugin doesn't induce latency. If you use linear phase mode, which I typically suggest if you're doing post-production in the studio, because then latency isn't a big issue, and in most cases, linear phase is the cleaner thing to do. I know sometimes if it comes to transients and so on, there are issues, and some people simply prefer minimum phase mode. That's why you can even set a default. So if you disable this, then every new instance will be opened in minimum phase mode. If you enable it, every new instance will be initialized with linear phase mode.
Brilliant.
Because we had a lot of internal discussions about that. So there are different preferences in our team as well. So we thought, okay, it's always, if we cannot really decide on if we can't draw a final decision, let's put it on the settings page. So probably not the best thing to do, but in this case, I think it was a good solution.
All right. Well, I mean, I think we're cool to move on. While you're bringing up the next plugin, more than one person has brought up a smart delay. Is there any news on that? Is that something you're thinking about? Can we expect it next week? What's going on with that, Alex?
Smart delay. Sure, it's coming up next week. No, I mean, we have been thinking about different. So we are working on stuff that's coming up. And we've been thinking about building blocks that we could try to make smart. And interestingly, smart delay is really one of the building blocks that's so often requested.
Yeah. And
somehow we are still trying to, I don't know, probably so we are a bit, I think we lack a bit of inspiration of what the smart delay would actually do.
Yeah, that's just what I'm thinking is how would that work? Because, that's a really...
I mean, there can be things like just adapting to, for example, the tempo of the track or stuff like that, but this is kind of easy. So it's almost too easy we can still do that, obviously, but it's not... It's difficult for us, at least, to think about a data-driven approach to something like a smart delay. That's why we, to be honest, didn't look into that yet. At least not at the level when it comes to product design. But if people keep requesting that, we will have another look. And if people have specific ideas of what they would expect from a smart delay, please tell us. Perfect. It really helps us because everyone has its own workflow, and it really helps to get real-world requests and feature ideas from the users out there.
I think 3 people brought up smart delay. And one other question was, overlooked dent. Was wondering, what's the max you can have in a group?
It's 6 instances.
And can you have multiple groups in a project then?
Exactly. So the idea normally what you would do is probably, for example, in this case, you have the backing vocals with a couple of tracks and the drums with a couple of tracks. And what you could do is you could create one group only with the drums, and then you could create a bus, and then this bus would be the instance that's going into the master group, like the one that I was showing. So that way, normally you can have up to how many instances you want. But in terms of one group, it's only 6 instances.
Yeah. I was thinking, I mean, I called it a group, but I guess it's a little confusing. I'm an Ableton user, so their buses are pretty much groups in that. So I would just group all the drums together, essentially. And
exactly. So here it's called track stack in Logic. It's also a bus, All
right. Well, let's keep cooking. While he's bringing up the next plugin, for those that are just showing up, we're here with Sonible and Alex, a co-founder of the company, and he's showing us around the Smart plugins. And next up, it looks like we're checking out the Smart Compressor 2.
Exactly. So Smart Compressor, like as I said when I talked about Smart EQ, again, the idea is that the plugin listens to the signal for a couple of seconds, extracts some information from it, and then suggests nice starting points for working with the compressor. And there is other stuff going on, but it's the main thing that's happening during the learning process. Smart Com 2 is our latest plugin. It was just released a bit more than a month ago. It was very, very positive feedback from users, so we're really happy that people enjoyed the new release. And I also think it's a great plugin. And I'll just quickly show you how it's working on this drum bus. So in this case, it's already learned, but I can learn it again. Here the learning takes a bit longer because there are small gaps in between, and it's kind of, But as you can see, more or less the same parameters as before. So what the plugin does in learning mode is, again, what I forgot here is you select the profile. In this case, it's not only instruments, like instrument tracks as in Smart EQ, but it's also buses, like for example, drum bus, guitar bus, or vocal bus. And it's even entire mixes. So if you want to have it on the master channel, then you can also use it for kind of balancing out the final dynamics of the whole mix, not only individual tracks. But in this case, it's on the drum bus, so I selected the profile drum bus. I let the plugin learn, and that's what it suggested. So what's happening after learning is it sets the ratio, the threshold, and attack, and enables the auto release. It also enables the auto gain if you want to. You can tell the plugin if it should also set an input gain or not. It's on the settings page. I disabled it here, but if you have a plugin with a very low level, then you could either go down with the threshold very low and then add gain afterwards, or you just increase the input gain and have a nice threshold. So that's again, it's a matter of taste if you want to do that or not. So the option is there. And once the plugin is set, it starts compressing. And I want to quickly just mute it, because otherwise you won't hear me. Because what I want to talk about is mainly for visually interesting, I think. One thing that we try to do with the plugins is always to show what's happening. Not only that people can listen to what's happening, but also to show what's happening. And for the compressor, what we do is we do not, because most people know these visualizations with the signal and then the gain reduction running through. But if you change something, normally only the things that are coming in, like the new signals, are processed with the new settings. But what we implemented is what we called instant impact prediction or replay, that you see the changes that you make on the whole signal. So even on the past signal, if you want to. And that makes it extremely easy to see, okay, what's actually happening to the signal if I change the threshold, like what's happening to the gain reduction, what's happening if I'm changing the attack. So even highlight here, if you look at the signal, we highlight the signal parts that are disappearing because of the attack. And so I think it also helps people to understand, okay, what does attack time actually do? So if I set it to 300, nothing is compressed, almost nothing, because it just it's not getting triggered. And if I make it very short, then a lot of the transients are already compressed because it's reacting very quickly. Same goes for the release. If I set it to 0, then it returns quickly to 0 gain reduction. If I increase the release, you can see like how long the compressor stays in gain reduction and slowly comes back. So this is a great help. Not only it's a great help for people who just start using a compressor, but I think it's also of great help for people who know what a compressor is doing, but to get, in addition to the acoustic feedback, some visual feedback. So also something I wanted to show, because it feels so normal that this is happening, but actually normally it isn't happening. So we are a bit proud of this feature for Smart Comp 2.
Well, it looks amazing, and I remember making the video for this. Actionable feedback. It looks amazing, but the fact that I have actionable feedback is incredible. I think we've lost you, Alex. Maybe there's a snowstorm. I'm just going to flip back to me. And we've lost Alex for a second, so I'll just jump in here. How's everybody doing? Enjoying the presentation? Thanks for joining us. It looks like we got quite a few people just showed up here. We're here with Alex Wankhammer from Sonible. He is the co-founder of the company, and he's showing us around the Smart line of plugins that they have. And we are doing a plugin giveaway. We're doing a bunch of plugin giveaways, in fact. And if you want to win a plugin, all you need to do is be active in the chat and be a positive force. Ask good questions. We've seen your questions. We've got a lot of questions coming in, and it's great. Keep them coming, but we're trying to get through them all while still allowing Alex to do his presentation. I'm just going to send him a message here and see if he's back online. I wonder if he even knows that he's not online anymore. So where's everybody coming in from? Where's everybody at? It's almost 6 o'clock. I'm in the UK. I'm in Eastbourne. Has anyone ever been to Eastbourne before? I think we've got a bunch of video archives that you guys can check out on top of what we're doing here today. Killian, if you want to throw a couple of those in the chat.
Do you hear me?
All right, we're back. We're coming back. We're slowly getting back in. How are you, man? Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay, but the problem is my laptop had a kernel panic, which is totally not a good sign.
Yeah.
So it means that the CPU had some issues, and I really, really hope that it won't happen again.
Okay.
Can't promise anything right now, but at least it restarted. So I'm really sorry for that.
It's all right. We're just chilling. We're here talking about where everybody's from. We got people from the UK, Washington State, Trinidad, Germany, Liverpool, Mississippi, Costa Rica, Chicago. Everybody's here to watch you talk about smart plugins, Alex. Are you back online and I can flip back open your computer screen, or you need a little bit more time?
I'm just opening the screen sharing.
That's the nature of these things, man. These live streams.
Yeah, it's like, come on. But it's really it's crazy. Wrong browser. Wait a second, because I did this before.
People from France, Ukraine, Sweden, Serbia, Arkansas. Man, this is epic. This is so epic right now. Maine, New York, Poland. Ooh, Panama. Manchester. I was just in Manchester. My friend and Killian and I were in Manchester filming some stuff with a gentleman called Younger from there. That's coming out soon on the channel, so make sure to subscribe to check that out. Berlin.
So
South Africa.
We should be back to sharing. Just setting up the The link.
Taiwan, Croatia. Whew. This is truly global right now, Alex.
That's great, and everyone saw my computer panicking.
No
because
one saw anything.
Of so many people. Now it's like the thing is, I wouldn't mind too much, but I'm afraid that this could be happening again because I know Macs, and if a Mac starts to do that, that's most of the time it's a graphics problem with the graphics chip, and if it gets too hot, then one of the pins gets disconnected. And I never had it with this laptop, but I had it with another one, and I'm afraid that this could be happening again. So
can we maybe disable something, or what can we do to make it a little cooler over there?
There's not much I can do because if it's streaming, and it's mainly the streaming. That's again. Let's just continue and hope for the best. You should be able to listen to my.
Well, I think I think you got to give me a new code. Unfortunately,
I send it to the.
Okay, this is a new one here.
To the chat, yeah.
I'm just gonna. All right, and here we go. Can you give me a little audio? Great, we're good.
Okay.
And we're back up and running, everybody. Let's just give it a round of applause. We are back at.
And big fingers crossed that we manage the next couple of minutes. So I'll try to be quick so that we get at least over all the plugins. And if the computer survives, then we can spend more time there. So I was talking about Smart Comp 2, about the automatic parameterization and everything. And this is the wrong bus. I was on the drums. And so this is the core of what's happening. And another thing that's really special and cool about Smart Comp is the way it's applying compression. Because what we use, it's called spectral compression. And it means that if you're using spectral compression, I can again show that also visually. If I disable spectral compression, you can see that there are mainly lines down there. And the line means that in all frequencies, from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, there's the same amount of compression applied. And if I increase spectral compression, you can see that these lines turn to shapes. And it means that in certain regions, there is more compression applied than in other regions. And what it does, like what SmartComp does, is it looks at continuously at the signal and at the energies in different frequency bands. And if there is a certain frequency band that's mainly responsible for causing the compression, so that's overrepresented, it compresses this band a bit more than the others. So this is kind of acting like a very, very quick and very, very fine-grained multiband compressor, but without having to adjust any parameters. So it's just, how do you say, it's like inherent to how the compressor is implemented. And this is that's the reason why SmartComp can sound extremely smooth, even if you have quite harsh compression settings. So that's, in terms of just normal compression, a great feature that we have here.
Can you tell us why you might want to filter out certain frequencies there? I see you've got a filter there for the essentially roll off so the highs and the lows. Why might you want to do that instead of just having it completely open?
So what you can control here is actually two things. One thing is to select the frequency region where you want to apply spectral compression. And for example, let's say you have a problematic low end and you want to apply spectral compression there because there is something, I don't know, a kick that's always coming through too heavily, but you don't want to, for whatever reason, apply spectral compression to the mids and highs. You can just limit the spectral compression to the low end, and the rest is normally compressed. So it means broadband compression, so same amount of compression for everything above this line, and spectral compression in this green area. But what you can also do, you can even limit the whole compression to this region, and that's when you increase spectral link. So if I set spectral link to 100%, now only the low frequency range is compressed and the rest of the signal is untouched. This can cause quite a lot of change in the sound, because if you only compress the bass and the rest remains intact, then the bass loses power, and it becomes brighter, the whole sound, but it can be exactly what you want. So this is a bit like using, I don't know, it's a bit like using a dynamic EQ on a certain frequency region, but it's different. It's something that you have to play with, and really depending on the signal that you have, this may work wonders, or you can just leave it to full range, 100%, 0% spectral link. That's the default mode, how you would use it.
All right. Should we keep it running? I don't want to overheat the laptop.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So the thing is, it gets a bit boring if the plugins are not. I can decrease the size of the window a bit. Helps to save some GPU power.
Okay.
Because obviously it's a GPU.
Well, we can keep rocking if you want. I've got some questions here.
Yeah.
Can the spectral compressor smooth vocal resonances? And that is from Patrick Osterday.
Yeah. It actually can. So if you set it to a very high amount, then it will really act a little bit like the effect can then be a little bit like the dynamic mode of the EQ. So because it's really by distributing the compression to different regions, and by heavily focusing on stuff that's for example resonating, you can remove these resonances. So it's then you kind of misuse the compressor a bit, like how you would normally use a dynamic EQ, but it's perfectly fine to do that. If you go to 150%, normally you would probably be somewhere between 70 and 100. It's
all right. Someone's wondering, while we're talking about spectral compression, is there a way to bypass just that section of the VST to hear what it's actually doing in conjunction with the actual compressor?
Yeah. No. The only thing you can do is really just switch it to 0 and then back to a certain amount. In Smart Comp 1, we had a button to actually disable spectral compression. But the thing was that a lot of people felt as if spectral compression was a special thing that they only add in certain situations. And so they let it disabled. But the actual idea is that spectral compression is the default mode. So it is a spectral compressor. And you can use it heavily, or you can kind of just use a little bit of it. And that was the reason why in this case we didn't want people to be able to disable it, so that people not kind of are forced to use it, but understand that this is an inherent part of the plugin, and it's just a tuning parameter like the style or the color. So
what you're saying is, for everybody watching right now, don't be afraid of spectral compression. Go for it.
Exactly. Go for it. Yeah.
Another question. I see that you've got an external sidechain feature here, and someone was asked like a few times, really wanted to know if there is sidechain capability in the Smart EQ.
In Smart EQ, no, because for Smart EQ, the communication between the different instances is not via sidechain, so they automatically appear as additional instances in the plugin, and they exchange data. What you cannot do is, I don't know, route some site, like you cannot route a channel where there is no Smart EQ into the Smart Eq3 input. So if you want to have the information from a track in group mode, you need to load Smart EQ onto the respective track.
All right. Well, let's keep going. I want to get through all of them before your computer.
Yeah, totally. Let's not jinx it. So.
No, I think we're going to be all right. I think. Do you need, maybe you want to like turn off the Smart EQs or something, like just so we can really minimize? I know that streaming just adds a whole extra tax on the computer.
Yeah.
No,
not to listen to.
Do you think we could also go back and do the HD thing, or I think it's a little? Did you select the HD on the screen share app? Did you do that?
I think I did, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's keep rocking.
Okay. So next thing I want to show is Smart Limit. Like this is a limiter plugin. I think it's obvious from the name. Again, same logic as with the compressor and the EQ. you can hit the learn button, let the plugin listen to the signal for a couple of seconds, and then it automatically suggests the main limiting parameters. So in this case, it's a limit, an attack and release for the limiter, and the gain. And the one thing that's really nice with the limiter in terms of visualization is the loudness and dynamics monitoring, because a lot of times when you using a limiter, at least in this case, it's mainly designed for kind of mixes. So that's also the reason why all the profiles are really genres and not individual tracks. So, and if you're having this limiter on the master bus, then it's quite often interesting to know more about the dynamics and the loudness of your signal, because you may want to release it for Spotify or whatever. And what we implemented for Smart Limit is the loudness and dynamics grid. And it is, on the one hand, it's interesting just in terms of what it is, because it shows the relation of loudness and dynamics in one visualization. So you have here the loudness, and here you have the dynamics. And you can see if I change, for example, the gain, you can see that the loudness is decreasing, so it goes further down. And so are the dynamics, because it's not as much limited as it would have been if I increase the gain. So you can see that this X is not like, and it shows that it's impossible to just increase the loudness while not increasing the dynamics. This is an inherent relation, and people have to understand it when mixing, that it's always a trade-off between how loud do I want to be and how much dynamics do I want to preserve.
Yeah.
And now you may wonder what these two green areas here are. These areas should help you to get a kind of a reference for where this X should probably head to. On the one hand, you have a reference for the loudness, which means, for example, if you're delivering for Spotify, we all know that we should have a minimum loudness of -14 dBs, so that Spotify doesn't turn it up. If you're louder, that's not really a big problem, because it's just turned down to the same level as all the other tracks, but there is no more processing by Spotify. So we want to make sure we are louder than -14 LUFS, and that's this green line here. On the other hand, we selected a genre. In this case, it's pop 2000s. And there is a reference region for tracks that we analyzed that were released in this genre. And it shows us, okay, our track is at the lower end of how dynamic, like the further right we go, the less dynamic it gets, the more squeezed it gets. So if I fully kind of squeeze it up, then you can see loudness goes up, but also dynamics are reduced. And by going down a bit, I can kind of give back some dynamics if I want to, and make sure that I'm in a region that's sensible for this kind of music.
So we wanna essentially aim that crosshair where the two green sections are overlapping to get something similar to whatever profile we've chosen.
Exactly. So for example, if I click, so because now we are slightly below, which is not a big problem. Normally, it means that they're a bit more dynamic than other tracks of this genre. And if I click the quality check, it tells me how could I go into this field here. So it says, okay, try increasing the input gain to reduce the dynamics. So I try that and I do that. Now it listens again to the signal, and since I should be hitting the green area, now it says, okay, everything is looking good. Kind of you're ready for release.
This is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. It's literally, so it is smart, but it's actually helping us become smarter, because if you do this enough times over and over again, you're going to start to get the relationship between the two. The fact, this is great. This is absolutely wonderful.
And what's also interesting is that if you change, normally if you have a loudness monitoring tool, for example, and you have, because we see the integrated loudness value here, which means the loudness over the whole track or the whole observation period. And normally, if you change some parameter, you have to restart the measurement from scratch so that the tool forgets everything it has seen before, and you have to replay back everything. And what we do is we predict. So if I change something, you can see that the plugin predicts where you are heading to. So it's the result like the outcome of your parameter changes are visibly much quicker than if you would stop playback, reset the measurement, start from so this is again, it's a feature that feels totally natural, but it's normally not part of metering plugins or
well, that's
or
what
limiters.
LUFs are, right? Is that's the one that's the whole relationship of the entire track, right?
Exactly. If you have you can have integrated short-term or momentary, but if you have integrated, it's really like the loudness over the whole track, or at least more than 60 seconds according to the standard. But by having this instant impact prediction, again, you're really quick in kind of finding the right adjustments to hit a certain target. So this is really.
Oh, I was gonna ask. Someone's asking if there's oversampling.
There is oversampling. Internally, we have oversampling for obviously for the true peak limiting, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to apply true peak limiting. And we have a saturation stage here. So this stage is also always oversampled. So the whole limiting stage and the saturation stage are internally oversampled.
Brilliant. Producer TV is wondering if there is going to be any future update with custom loudness profiles.
You can actually load in reference tracks. So you can, for example, have some reference track loaded in, and then the track is shown as a loudness target, or actually loudness and dynamics target inside this grid. And you can set your custom. If I just drag this LUFS line, I can just set any target I want. So I can have one of these presets, and these presets are just based on the specifications of the respective streaming platform or broadcasting standard. But if I want to have a specific value, then I can just drag this value to this region.
Brilliant.
And in terms of the plugin itself, before going to the next one, style is a great feature to, like, if the limiter is set to a soft style, it's almost impossible to make it sound to distort in any way. So even if you have extreme limiting settings, the limiter will not distort. So it's a quite unique way of how we are achieving this. So that's why I love the very, very soft style for a lot of music. If you're doing I don't know, some heavy electronic music or so, then you may prefer the hard style, because in hard style you can make the limiter sound. So if you want it to distort slightly and so on, you can go to hard style. But if you want to be sure that it's very, very transparent, you can just stay with the soft style.
Alex, can you talk about the relationship between a compressor and a limiter, how they're similar and how they're different? What makes them different? Why do I need both?
So the goals that you're achieving are slightly different. The compressor is a tool that just generally reduces the dynamics of your signal. So what you want to do with the compressor is that you bring the signal into a more compact dynamic range, so to reduce the dynamics a bit, to make it sound, as I said, more compact, and also to make it, if you play it back on different media, like a mobile phone or even in a car or so, where you have limited dynamic range, just according to the speaker system, you make sure that the song is still sounding good, and not that the quiet parts are almost inaudible and the loud parts are kind of crashing your ears. So this is kind of taming the overall dynamics of the signal. With the limiter, you want to make sure that and if you, for example, apply a compressor, it doesn't mean that the loudest signal parts cannot be clipping or go over 0 dB. With a limiter, that's the main reason why to use a limiter. You just want to make sure that you don't have a hard clipping signal. So what the limiter, what a classical limiter is doing, it just looks at the signal level, and as soon as you reach 0 dB, it starts rounding it off, so that, how do you say that? So that it doesn't just cut the signal at 0 dB, but you kind of get a smooth transition between slightly below 0, and 0. And another thing that you're typically doing with the limiter is that you're having an input gain, and with this input gain, you kind of move the peaks of your signal to hit the limit. So you're using the limiter normally to, I mean, you could either just use a limiter as a kind of safety net, so that if you go with a certain level that it doesn't clip, but normally you would kind of set the limit like -1 dB, and then you use the gain, and you can see that in the visualization, and then you deliberately, and you can actually see what's happening. So the light gray is the input signal. This is the gained input signal. The dark gray is how the signal would look like without limiting, if it would be possible to display stuff above 0 dB, and the red is the limiter. And what you want to do is you squeeze the signal a bit into the limit, so that the peaks of your track are tamed, and the whole signal itself becomes louder. And that's what you see in the loudness. By moving, kind of by taming the peaks, you gain. You can add gain to the whole signal, which makes it again more compact and more homogeneous if you play it back on different systems. So probably if you put it like this, if you would have a compressor with infinite ratio and 0 attack, this would be a limiter. So because then you would make sure that you don't go over the threshold that you've set.
All right. Wonderful. What's up next? We got Smart Reverb, right?
Exactly. So the last plugin is Smart Reverb.
You might turn off that limiter.
Yeah, I think I did.
Oh, okay.
The compressor is still on.
I definitely want to hear this one in action, so that's the only reason why.
Yeah. So here I just have to activate Smart Eq again, because the vocals are not sounding too good otherwise. So I have the vocals, and they sound like this. Let me select the right section. I'll mute the master.
Yeah, we can't hear. Can you hear that? Because I can't hear that.
Are you?
Which is common.
Ah, here we go. I think
you
muted that one.
Okay, good. So this is the dry signal, and what I do now is I again select the profile. For the reverb, the list of profiles is the smallest for other plugins, because it's really a bit difficult to define profiles for the reverb. That's why universal in this case is most of the time quite good. But if you have specifics like vocals or keys or guitar, you can adapt the processing. In this case, I have vocals, so I select the vocal profile.
Can you play the dry signal just one more time, just so we can get a...
Yeah, sure.
Which is coming soon. Finding our way out.
All
okay.
Right. Yeah.
And now I mean, it's already learned, but I can learn it again. You will already hear the reverb, so nothing is changing too much probably, but same logic. I hit learn. The plugin listens to the signal, and in this case, it doesn't set. And this is also really important. Most people think that the reverb time is set by Smart Limit, but it's not actually true. But what Smart Reverb does, it finds the right reverb space for this kind of track. So it looks at the track, it looks at the specifics of the track. For example, also the spectral distribution, energies in different regions, and makes sure that the reverb that's computed fits the track. That's what Smart Reverb does. It doesn't select the reverb time for you because the reverb time is extremely dependent, obviously, on what goal you want to achieve with the plugin. So in this case, the classical reverb parameters can be set by yourself, and the plugin selects more or less a nice pre-selection of spaces that you can later browse through. So I can show you that.
Which is coming soon. Finding our way out. No more empty rooms. Which is coming soon. Finding our way out.
And so now this is the initial reverb that's computed, and now I can, depending on my taste, I can select if it should sound natural or more artificial or intimate or rich, and I can easily kind of fade between these settings by just moving this slider here, as I can show you.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms. Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms. Which...
So the reverb time always remains the same, but the character of the reverb totally changes. And the idea is, because you can see if I'm browsing through this reverb space, a lot of parameters are changing on the right-hand side. And the idea is that you typically select a reverb that sounds quite good for you. And then if you want to further fine-tune it, you have a lot of different options to tweak the reverb. On the one hand, the reverb time, but okay, let's keep that set as is. But you can also define the decay curve. So this means how does the reverb evolve over time, the reverb energy. So I can show you what's happening if I play around with this.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms.
That's what's giving us like where it's coming back in a second time almost.
Exactly. So it's almost like an echo effect because it fades down and then it comes back. I can always reactivate the original one. So the decay curve is a thing where you can get very creative when it comes to shaping the reverb. Another thing is the spread. The spread means how wide the reverb sounds over time. So like how quickly it becomes wide. So if I set it to a very high value right from the beginning, it will be a quite broad reverb. And if I reduce the spread, it will be more of a narrow reverb. And I can set a limit for the spread. So because I probably don't want the low end to gain initial width, because normally I want the low end to be quite narrow. So I can kind of set a cutoff frequency, and only things above this frequency are applied. Only spread is only applied to signals above this frequency.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms. Which is coming soon, finding...
Is here like now it's almost like a mono reverb. So so you cannot only say how wide it is, but also how it evolves over time. And the last thing is the density, and the density defines more or less how quickly the reverb becomes diffuse. Because if you have a reverb in a room, you initially have discrete reflections, like the first reflections, and you can also hear them as distinct reflections. And at some point, the first reflections or early reflections, they cross over to a diffuse sound. You know, when everything is kind of when there are no discrete reflections perceivable anymore. And by controlling the density, you can either make it diffuse right from the beginning. And by the way, you can also see the impact in the display above there.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Or you can leave it very sparse. So in this case, there would be kind of discrete reflections until the end, so it would never become really diffuse. It's a bit subtle sometimes, but it's interesting to play around with this.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms. Which is coming soon, finding our way out.
So I think you get an idea of it. So the thing with a smart reverb is it's an extremely versatile reverb, but we saw that a lot of people are a bit overwhelmed by what's possible to do. So my recommendation is start with kind of learn a reverb space, find your style, and normally since the space really covers a lot of different styles, there should be a style in there that works for you, and then you can probably, if you want to fine tune a bit, but make sure you don't get lost, because that's the problem that you may have. That if you start tweaking around here, that you know, it's fun, but at some point you may get lost. So
that's why you have like the revert to learned profile button, right?
Exactly. So that's the reason when if you're totally lost somehow, you just click on the button again, and then you're back to what you did. And one thing you can filter the reverb. So it's just a small EQ where you can filter the reverb. And if you want to become really detailed, you can even modify the spectral evolvement, like the spectral decay of the reverb. So you can imagine that this curve is kind of replicate it here, but in different bands. And by doing so, I could, for example, make the mids fade out slower than the low end and the highs. So,
which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms.
So it's something you can play around with quite a lot. But altogether, the nice thing with Smart Reverb is that normally reverb, like finding a reverb is often like browsing through literally hundreds of room presets. And we thought, okay, how could we make that easier? And the solution for us was, okay, to kind of select the right rooms or kind of pre-select the right rooms, distribute them on this grid, and then you can just browse through this grid. So that's the core idea of this tool.
It's phenomenal. A couple of questions about it coming from the chat. A couple of people are asking if there's internal ducking, so ducking out of the way of the dry signal, essentially.
Yeah, you can. This is the clarity control. So the clarity control, if set to 0, there's just reverb. If you can also, let's do that with a long reverb. If I increase the clarity, you will hear that the reverb is tucked away if a new signal is coming in.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms. Which is coming soon, finding our way out.
So this is particularly useful for vocals, so that they don't get lost in the reverb at some point. But also for drums, for example, if you have a new hit coming in and it's not and the other hits didn't fade out yet. Yeah. So this is the clarity control.
Go ahead. Okay. Someone else is wondering if you can showcase the freeze in infinite features of the plugin.
Yeah. So the reverb has a freeze in infinite. Freeze kind of captures the reverb at a certain moment in time and just replays it infinitely. And infinite is just an infinite reverb. So it's as if you set the reverb time to infinite.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out.
And maybe that's a good example to use the clarity there if you want to bring that in while that's happening.
Yeah, in this case, is it? Let me see. I'm not sure what's happening because it's a different algorithm.
Which is coming soon.
That works.
Finding our way out, no more empty rooms.
Nice.
Yeah. Actually, I never tried this infinite in clarity, I have to admit.
That's what we do here on Plugin Boutique live streams, man. We push you to the limit.
Yeah, and it worked, so that's great. And freeze is just a capture a moment of the reverb, and then it's displayed infinitely to create kind of layers of reverb. It's a totally purely creative effect.
Which is coming soon, finding our way out, no more empty rooms.
Oh yeah, I could see automating that with some vocal, like on like a syllable inside of the word or something. That'd be a really cool effect. Definitely.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that's, I would say, the core. So we went through all the plugins. Hooray!
We did it.
My computer didn't die yet. It's still really hot, so it's really strange.
I'm telling you, it's the Plugin Boutique streams, man. They can feel the heat.
Probably.
These dev streams are absolutely just off the charts in terms of heat.
But it's a good reason to buy a new laptop, There's always an upside with every downside. There you go.
Hit it. I mean, I'm telling you, I was just telling you the iPhone 14, it's coming out. So that's absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, an incredible set of plugins you have there. They truly are smart. A few things that I particularly enjoy about them. One is not only do they look smooth, I love the color, the palette, but that's visually interesting, but also, as I said, actionable visual feedback is so key. It's not just pretty. It's actually giving you the information to help you make better decisions in whatever you're using. Obviously, EQ would be the EQ, or the limiter would be the limiting. But, I mean, it's just great. And I also love the fact that you've you've made it so it's accessible to the beginner, but also very intricate and detailed for the more seasoned people. And the fact that, especially on that limiter, with the kind of like giving you the crosshairs and this is where you should go, like it's going to help you learn. If you do it enough time, you won't even need the helping hand, but it's because of seeing it in real time and letting it show you and guide you. And by doing that process over and over, you're really going to learn it in the end. And then you're going to be, a mixing and a mastering engineer at the end of the day, whether it's for your own personal use or maybe that's the career you go into. I just think it's really cool that if you use these plugins enough, you're actually learning on top of just getting the result in the end. So it's smart in that it will do a lot of the work for you, but it's also smart that it's going to help you get smarter by showing you what it's doing. It's not just going to do it like a black box and be like, well, what's happened? Like literally, as you said, like having all of the visual feedback is just going to help the process, and and it looks great. I mean, I can't say it enough.
Thank you. Like I couldn't have said it better. Great summary.
So yeah, thank you very much for coming through. It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry to break your computer, but as I said, that's just how we roll here at Plugin Boutique.
That's fine.
I think we should do the giveaway now. I think you've got 4 plugins. Maybe give one of each away and then a smart bundle. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me.
You see what I did there, chat? I put them on blast, literally here live on the podcast, and now he's got to say yes. Otherwise, So what we're going to do here, my friend Killian has been selecting names at random. We're going to pick 5 names. So he's going to give me 10 names, and then I'm going to have you pick 5 numbers between 1 and 10, Alex, and then those will be the winners of the plugins. So what are your 5 favorite numbers between 1 and 10?
7.
That's it. Yep, absolutely.
2, 1.
2 and 1. Okay, great.
9 and 8.
2, 1, 9, and 8. All right. And the way we're going to do this, so we kind of went through the EQ, then the limiter, then the compressor, then the limiter, then the reverb. All right, so here we go. The winners of the plugins from Sonible. Everybody, again, say thank you to Alex for supplying these. He didn't have to, but he did, so you're a legend for that, Alex. The winner of the Smart Eq3 from Sonible is Ken Vives. That's Kenvives. Congratulations. I'm going to make a note of that here, just so we can do it. While I'm making a note, the winners, if you do win, please send an email to support@pluginboutique.com with a screenshot of you logged into your YouTube channel and just a brief explanation of what you won and where you won it. Number 1 was Dave M. Dave M., you win the Smart Compressor. Congratulations. And the limiter was number... I've done it wrong. Hold on. Dave M. Oh no. Number 2. Number 7 is the limiter. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Riptide L. Riptide L, you win the limiter, the smart limiter from Sonible. And the reverb was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kimmy Anderson. Kimmy Anderson, congratulations. You win the smart reverb. And finally, drum roll please, the smart bundle. Here we go. It's Aaron Malik. Aaron Malik, congratulations. Smart bundle coming your way. And as I said, if you've been called as a winner, please email support@pluginboutique.com with you logged in here as that username on YouTube, and we will get you sorted as soon as possible. Obviously, it's 6:30 here in the UK, so it won't be immediately, but we will get you hooked up. Alex, again, man, thank you for taking the time. It's been very enlightening for me. I'm sure it's been enlightening for our guests. Just a great bunch of plugins. We're all very excited to see what the future holds for Sonible. Everybody, it's one of the questions that always comes up is what's next, and obviously, we can't say that here on the stream today. But when that comes out, whatever it may be, please join us again, and we will put you, the plugin, and your new computer through the paces here on another Plugin Boutique dev stream.
Sounds good.
All right.
Totally in for that.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. As I said, we've got a bunch of live streams coming up this week or this month. We've got Isotope on the 22nd and the 21st. Their new plugins. Then after that, we've got Arturia. And then after that, Mastering the Mix. Lots coming up. The schedule is posted on our socials and here on YouTube. So tune in for those. And with that, Alex, chat, Killian, thanks for helping. And everybody else, we will see you in the next video or live stream.
To the top, ragamuffin keeps striving in every way. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm with them in the move, but the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place, I with the one Jamal skinny. We are the general. We sit up on the rhythm and open the mic incredible. I'm me right palm with them in the move, but the rhythm I sit down steady. Every ragamuffin you want to rock and follow me. Jump up on the rhythm, make we ride it right. We chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we chop a mic, they call we give it a general. International, when me ride palm with them in the move, but the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm with them and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place, I with the one Jamal skin.